Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the People Processes Podcast. I'm your host, Rami Alijil. Today, we're going to be talking about COVID-19 liability. There's a lot of talk in Congress, whether that's the House or the Senate, about a new stimulus bill, and a lot of the questions revolve around a COVID-19 liability shield for businesses. And we want to take a look at, well, is it needed? And what would its effect be? And what are states doing right now already that's putting it in place? So, first thing I want to talk about is this a problem, right? So, we're going to talk about the COVID-19 um, tracker by Hunt and Andrews Kurth. This is a law firm, and it's keeping track of every primary lawsuit complaint related to COVID-19. And there are many different types of cases in here, like around education. So, for example, there are 177 requests for refund because campus is closed, right? And those are relevant, but not so much to the broader business community. The primary cases we're worried about are these consumer cases, primarily personal injury, i.e., exposure to COVID-19 in a public place, right? And as you can see, in the entire country, from January till current, there have only been 19 of those sorts of cases. Now, there are other cases that do matter in here. Wrongful death, right? Those are around employment. There are plenty that are not coded, around 100 of those that may wind up being part of that. Um, there are quite a few. There's many cases around um, not giving essential versus non-essential businesses, school closings, voting. There are cases also around FFCRA like crazy, like not getting appropriate leave. But the liability shields are those that are going to something that Congress wants to pass in order to say, hey, if someone comes into your business and they get sick, you don't get sued. And as you can see, just judging from where we're at right now, again, maybe a lot of these cases haven't actually been filed in the courts. They're being litigated by lawyers or arbitration agreements at this point. But it doesn't seem to be that there's a major rash of people suing over this. There's not a major rash of employees either suing over this. So, thinking about that, we want to talk a little bit about some of the states that are doing things about this. For example, Iowa, back in June, signed a law called the COVID-19 Response and Back to Business Limited Liability Act. And it's a good example. It provides limited liability to business owners. And basically it says a person who possesses or is in control of a business, premises, whether you're a lessee or you own it, that kind of thing, if you are involved in letting someone onto your property, is not liable for civil damages for an injury sustained from the individual's exposure to COVID-19 unless the person possesses or is in control of the premises and recklessly disregards a substantial and unnecessary risk that the individual would be exposed to COVID-19 or exposes them through an act of malice or intentionally exposes the person to it. So this is a good example of the laws. Iowa passed a law like that. North Carolina, Alabama, Arkansas, Kansas, Louisiana, Oklahoma, Utah, Wyoming, and a new update, August 21, just a few days ago, Tennessee added a COVID-19 immunity bill into law. So this was it's the Tennessee COVID-19 Recovery Act, SB 8002. It limits liability related to loss, damage, injury, or death due to COVID-19. There were plenty of things that went back and forth on this, but there's primarily the key thing is there's a liability shield. An individual or legal entity is shielded for loss, damage, injury, or death arising from COVID-19 unless the claimant can prove by clear and convincing evidence that the individual or legal entity proximately caused the loss, damage, or injury, or death by an act of omission constituting gross negligence or willful misconduct. So, that changes things. Many states are moving into that direction already, so there isn't a federal law necessary. Keep in mind, though, that in talks of these liability shields, employment is excluded in almost every case. Now, it's not always the case, but in most states, they're actually going the opposite way with employers. They're saying if an employee gets sick, as opposed to a client or a customer, Some states are saying by default the employer is responsible unless the employer can prove otherwise, right? So, for example, California is a great state like that. If an employee gets COVID-19, the assumption is they got it at work and it's a workers' compensation claim, unless the employer can prove that they did not get it through work or that work took sufficient safeguards and there's a very low probability that they would get it through work. So, as an employer, you have to think about your clients and you have to think about your employees. Here's the truth, though. In almost all of these cases, even the employee level ones, liability is not normally being found on the employer as long as the employer is following the CDC guidelines for their type of business. The CDC breaks their recommendations up into different levels. Level 4 being things like hospitals actively treating COVID-19 patients. They have different rules about system safety issues like air control and all this kind of stuff that businesses, that just happen to serve the public don't have to worry about. Check out the cdc.gov website. It's linked on ours, where you can look into those regulations. Most regular kind of, businesses that see the public, you need to have masks. You need to maintain social distancing and have postings related to that. And if you do have employees, you need to make mitigation efforts around how you have your employees come in. If you have people who are at particularly high risk, have them come in at different times or work from home. Try staggering breaks. Make sure your break rooms don't become overcrowded. These sorts of things are all laid out in the CDC guidelines, and they really do provide a large amount of liability protection for you. As you hear more talks of a new bill coming through Congress, just keep in mind that the liability shield, which I find very important and I think is a reasonable thing, but that's a personal political opinion, isn't the end-all be-all. Right now, most people who get COVID are not suing the restaurant they got COVID at. It's just not a reasonable thing to do. And as long as there is not gross negligence or willful misconduct, we're not seeing those cases appear. That's no reason not to follow CDC guidelines. I think if you don't follow the CDC guidelines, that will be evidence of willful misconduct, of saying, you knew, the CDC said everybody's got to wear a mask. Look, 16 businesses right next to you said, wear a mask to come in here. You guys didn't post that. So, post requirements around social distancing, mask wearing, hand washing, and try to stagger your shifts if you do have to have something that's in person and have everybody come into the office. If you're able to, please maintain teleworking. I think it's going to pay dividends, again, primarily in this liability world. And it may be the future. It's an employment advantage, I think, in the long run. We'll see how that comes. For now, ladies and gentlemen, please check out the CDC guidelines. Reminder of those states, I'm going to go through them again real quick. Those are Tennessee, as of like 2-3 days ago, a week ago. Plus North Carolina, Alabama, Arkansas, Kansas, Louisiana, Oklahoma, Utah, Wyoming have liability shields in place as long as you're following the CDC guidelines, and the federal government will likely come out with one soon that will be retroactive as well, as long as you're following those. So take the time, follow the CDC guidelines. I don't like featuring COVID too much. I know it's very important. We try to think about the processes that will help you scale and grow your people and organization here. But since Tennessee just passed this law and I happened to be there, I thought we'd feature it on an episode. In the meantime, please take a moment to like, subscribe, review us on the podcatcher of your choice, and go to peopleprocesses.com and subscribe. Any of our subscribers, if you ever want to email us or go on our live chat or comment on one of the articles on peopleprocesses.com, maybe you need help. Maybe you say, hey, I need posters for hand washing. I've got those. We've got all kinds of stuff, and we'd be happy to help. Also, at academy.peopleprocesses.com, you can register for courses related to employee safety, all different sorts of things that may help you expand this internally in your own business. And since we're getting on to fourth quarter, as a reminder, January 1 is when a lot of companies make changes to their providers. If there's anything we can do to help you, please let us know. We would love to earn your business for our various programs. Reach out at peopleprocesses.com. Now, I'm Rami Ali Jill, and I appreciate you tuning in. It's time for you to go out there, have a great day, and get your work done. I'll see you tomorrow.